You're a Janissary soldier stationed in Istanbul, 1553. For weeks, whispers have been spreading through the barracks. Prince Mustafa, the Sultan's eldest son, the most beloved prince in the empire, is coming to the capital. He's been summoned by his father, Sultan Suleiman, to meet at the imperial camp in Eregli. The soldiers are excited. Mustafa is their hero, brilliant military commander, brave, just, everything a sultan should be. Some say when Suleiman dies, Mustafa will be the greatest sultan the empire has ever seen. But you notice something strange. The palace officials aren't celebrating. They're quiet, tense, afraid. And in the harem, Hurrem Sultan, the emperor's wife, is watching, waiting. Before we go any further, you need to understand something about what's about to happen to Prince Mustafa. The romantic version of history blames Hurrem entirely, calls her a manipulative witch who poisoned Suleiman's mind against his own son out of pure ambition. That version is incomplete. What actually happened between 1543 and 1553 was something far more complex, far more calculated, and far more revealing about how power operates when mothers have sons and only one son can survive. This is not just a story about a jealous stepmother. This is a story about a woman who understood that in the Ottoman system, mercy meant death, not for her, but for her children. And when forced to choose between her conscience and her son's survival, she chose survival. Let me show you how Hurrem Sultan orchestrated the destruction of the crown prince. In video 1, we saw how Hurrem rose from slave to sultan's wife, how she broke every rule of the harem, how she gave Suleiman 5 children when the system was designed to prevent any woman from having more than one. But that achievement created a problem. Suleiman already had an heir, Mustafa, son of Mahidevran, Suleiman's first concubine. Mustafa was everything an Ottoman prince should be. Born in 1515, he was the eldest son. By the 1540s, he was in his late 20s, governing the province of Manisa, commanding military campaigns, beloved by the Janissaries and the common people. Ottoman succession was brutal. When a sultan died, his sons fought for the throne. The winner killed his brothers to prevent civil war. This was the law of fratricide, established by Mehmed the Conqueror, designed to ensure stability. It was horrific, but it was the system. And everyone in the empire knew, when Suleiman died, Mustafa would win that fight. Which meant Hurrem's sons, Mehmed, Selim, Bayezid, and Cihangir, would die, strangled with a silk bowstring. Traditional Ottoman execution for princes. Hurrem understood this with absolute clarity. Her choices were simple: accept that her sons would be killed when Mustafa became sultan, or ensure Mustafa never became sultan. There was no third option. So Hurrem began to plant seeds. The campaign against Mustafa didn't start with accusations. It started with whispers. Hurrem had something no other woman in the harem had ever possessed: direct, constant access to the sultan. She was his legal wife, his advisor, his companion. They spent hours together, not just in private, but discussing politics, reading poetry, talking about governance. This intimacy gave Hurrem a weapon more powerful than any army: Suleiman's ear. And she used it carefully. She didn't accuse Mustafa directly, not at first. That would have been too obvious. Instead, she raised concerns, observations, questions. The Janissaries speak of Mustafa with such passion. Do they speak of you the same way? Mustafa is so loved in Anatolia. I hope he remains loyal. They say Mustafa grows impatient. I'm sure it's just rumor. These weren't accusations. They were doubts. And in the paranoid world of Ottoman politics, doubts were poison. Suleiman had reason to be paranoid. His own father, Selim I, had forced his father to abdicate. Rebellious sons were not theoretical threats in Ottoman history. They were precedents. But Hurrem wasn't working alone. She had an ally, a man who hated Mustafa as much as she feared him: Rustem Pasha, Grand Vizier of the Ottoman Empire, the second most powerful man in the state, and Hurrem's son-in-law. He was married to Hurrem's daughter, Mihrima. Rustem was everything Mustafa was not. He was not charismatic. He was not beloved. He was calculating, ruthless, bureaucratic. And he understood that if Mustafa became sultan, Rustem would be executed. New sultans killed their father's advisors to install their own. So Rustem and Hurrem formed an alliance. Together, they began to feed Suleiman information designed to make Mustafa look like a threat. Reports that the Janissaries were more loyal to Mustafa than to Suleiman. Rumors that provincial governors spoke of Mustafa as if he were already Sultan. Whispers that Mustafa was in secret communication with the Safavid Empire, Persia, the Ottomans' greatest enemy. None of this was proven, but in the Ottoman court, proof was less important than perception. Then, in 1543, something happened that accelerated everything. Hurrem's eldest son, Mehmed, died. He was 22 years old, governing Manisa, the same province Mustafa had governed before him. The sources say he died of smallpox, but his death destroyed Hurrem's careful calculations. Mehmed had been her hope, her eldest, her favorite. If anyone could challenge Mustafa for the throne, it was Mehmed. Now he was gone. That left Selim and Bayezid, her two surviving adult sons. Selim was not a warrior. He was scholarly, interested in poetry and mysticism. The Janissaries did not respect him. Bayezid was passionate, headstrong, charismatic, but reckless. Neither could defeat Mustafa in a succession fight, which meant Hurrem had to ensure there was no succession fight. Mustafa had to die before Suleiman died. And for that to happen, Suleiman himself had to order it. So in 1553, the opportunity came. Suleiman was campaigning in Persia. Mustafa was ordered to bring his forces and join his father's army at the camp in Eregli. When Mustafa arrived, he was summoned to his father's tent. This was normal. Princes reported to the Sultan during military campaigns. But this time, when Mustafa entered the tent, he found something unexpected. Suleiman was behind a curtain. Between Mustafa and his father stood 7 mute executioners. These men were deaf mutes, unable to speak or hear, used by Ottoman sultans for the most sensitive executions because they could never testify about what they witnessed. Mustafa understood immediately. According to the sources, he tried to fight. He was a trained warrior, strong, capable. But there were 7 of them. They tackled him, forced him to the ground, looped a silk bowstring around his neck and strangled him. Sultan Suleiman watched from behind the curtain. Mustafa was 38 years old. He had never rebelled. He had never betrayed his father. He had governed loyally, fought bravely, done everything an Ottoman prince was supposed to do, and he was murdered on his father's orders because his existence was a threat to Hurrem's sons. The Janissaries were horrified. When they learned Mustafa was dead, some wept openly. Others muttered about rebellion. Suleiman executed the officers who spoke too loudly. The empire accepted it. They had no choice. But the sources from that period, the chronicles, the letters from foreign ambassadors, they all say the same thing. This was Hurrem's doing. The Venetian ambassador wrote, "The Sultan has killed his best son on the advice of his wife." The historian Mustafa Ali wrote, "Hurrem Sultan, through her cunning and deceit, caused the death of the innocent prince." Even Ottoman sources, which usually avoided criticizing the royal family, described Mustafa's death as unjust. But here's the question history struggles with. Was Hurrem wrong? From a moral perspective, yes. Mustafa was innocent. He had not rebelled. He died because of lies and paranoia. But from Hurrem's perspective, as a mother, what was the alternative? If Mustafa lived, her sons died. That was the system. That was how Ottoman succession worked. She could choose to be moral and watch her children strangled, or she could be ruthless and give them a chance to survive. She chose ruthlessness, and it worked. With Mustafa dead, the succession was now between Hurrem's 2 surviving sons, Selim and Bayezid. But Mustafa's death had consequences Hurrem couldn't fully control. Mustafa's supporters didn't disappear. They transferred their loyalty to Mustafa's younger brother, another prince named Mustafa, son of a different concubine. Suleiman had him executed too, just to be safe. And Jihangir, Hurrem's youngest son, the one with physical disabilities who had loved Mustafa deeply, died shortly after. Some sources say from grief, others say from illness. Hurrem's campaign to protect her sons had now killed 3 princes, but Selim and Bayezid were still alive. And in 1558, Hurrem Sultan died. She was around 53 years old. She died in power. She died as the legal wife of the Sultan. She died having achieved what no woman in Ottoman history had achieved. But she didn't live to see which of her sons would become sultan. Because after her death, Selim and Bayezid did exactly what she had feared Mustafa would do. They went to war with each other. In 1559, Bayezid rebelled against his father, trying to seize the throne before Suleiman died. Suleiman, now 70 years old, sided with Selim. Bayezid fled to Persia seeking asylum. Suleiman paid the Persian Shah to hand Bayezid over, and in 1561, Bayezid and his 5 sons were executed, strangled with silk bowstrings, all of them. Hurrem had destroyed Mustafa to save her sons, and 3 years after her death, her own sons killed each other anyway. When Suleiman finally died in 1566, Selim became sultan, Selim II. Known in history as Selim the Drunkard, he was a weak ruler. He spent most of his reign in the harem, drinking, leaving governance to his viziers. The great Ottoman expansion stopped during his reign, and historians have asked ever since, would Mustafa have been a better sultan? Almost certainly. So what does Hurrem's elimination of Mustafa reveal about power? It reveals the trap mothers face in systems where only one son can survive. Hurrem didn't kill Mustafa out of random cruelty. She killed him because the system gave her no other choice. Either her children died, or he did. She chose her children, but that choice came with a cost. Mustafa's death stained her legacy. Even sources sympathetic to Hurrem describe it as her greatest crime. And it didn't even achieve what she intended. Her sons still fought each other. Bayezid still died. The system of fratricide couldn't be manipulated. It could only be survived. And survival required eliminating everyone in your way, even the innocent. That's the reality of power in systems built on elimination. You either destroy or you are destroyed. There is no third option. Hurrem chose to destroy. And the question that echoes through history is whether that choice was justified. Was she a mother protecting her children, or a murderer who killed an innocent man? The answer depends on whether you judge her by her intentions or her actions. But here's what matters. Hurrem didn't just eliminate Mustafa. She changed the entire structure of how power worked in the Ottoman Empire. In video 3, we'll explore how Hurrem shattered the rules of the harem, broke traditions that had stood for centuries, and created a new model of female power that would reshape the empire for generations. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Leave a comment. If you were Hurrem, knowing your sons would die if Mustafa lived, would you have made the same choice?